Hey, this is Steve with Life After Addiction and Indictment, and I'm glad you're here. I'm just relaunching my podcast. I had started a podcast last year, but lacked a little bit of clarity on a couple of things that I wanted to accomplish. And so I put it on hold. And over the last 6, 8 months, I've really kind of defined and really gotten clear on the direction I wanted this podcast to go. And after doing some thinking and talking to one of my buddies that I really respect that's in this industry, I decided that it'd be best to just relaunch. And I've renamed it. So this is Life After Addiction and Indictment. And I'm glad you made it here. And today I just want to talk a little bit about my story in relation to addiction. I call it dancing with the devil. I was using opiates for around 14 years. And it all started after I came off a Mormon mission due to a huge amount of weight loss. I went out at 19 years at a whopping 153 pounds. And just 3.5 months later, I weighed about 125 when my dad actually came out to see what was up. Because unfortunately, in the Mormon culture, it's gotten a lot better over the last 30 plus years, but it was looked at if you came off a mission, it was really frowned upon. And kind of the thought process to most Mormons, which is a little silly, is, well, if he's out there doing the Lord's work and serving the Lord, then why would there be any problems? He's got to be blessed. We're getting blessings as a family, so on and so forth. And so that's kind of the way I was treated. I got some nasty letters telling me basically that. But anyway, when my dad came out and saw me, he broke down because he saw I was pale and I had lost quite a bit of weight in a short amount of time, and I didn't have much weight to lose. At 19-year-olds weighing 153 pounds is really not that much. And so we flew home. Now I knew I was going home. And so did he when he was heading out there. It's not typical that they would fly out like that, but due to some circumstances, that's what took place. And I was sent home on an honorable medical release, still set apart as a missionary. And 3 nights later, I was eating dinner, and the reason I was still not set apart, I hadn't been released yet, is just the timing with getting with the state president to release me hadn't taken place. It was set for the following day, but the night before I was eating dinner, and all of a sudden I just had incredible stomach pains, which I had often out on my mission early in the mornings. I'd wake up with real bad, cramp stomach pain, really kind of lower stomach. And that hit me, and all of a sudden I just, like, my appetite disappeared. So my mom took me over to see her cousin, who was a physician, and he did the quick test down kind of where it hurt and off to the side. And he said, oh, it's appendicitis. So they got me checked into the hospital that night for the surgery that night. And it was supposed to be about a 20-minute surgery, and 2 hours into it, I hadn't, it wasn't finished. And my dad saw a doc that he knew come through the hospital there in the area he was waiting. So he asked him if he'd go in and see what's up. And about 20 minutes later, the actual surgeon came out. And when they cut me open for the appendicitis, yes, they did remove my appendix, but they also found my small intestine was black, ulcerated, and perforated. So they did a resection of about 16 inches. And I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. From that time forward, for the next several years, Crohn's would flare up. I'd be put on prednisone, and I obviously was getting prescribed pain pills. And pain pills metabolize different in my brain than they do most people. They don't make me drowsy. And in fact, they do the opposite. Same thing with like an Adderall, a stimulant. That does not pick me up. I can take one and go have a nap 30 minutes later, no problem. And what I found was I've kind of, had a flatline personality, so to speak. not real high, not real low, just kind of mellow and, um, but the pills, the opiates kind of made me a little more outgoing, felt a little better, felt a little more confident. And when you have that kind of reaction and you start to use them when you don't need them, all of a sudden you become physically addicted. So I had mental addiction, physical addiction, and I was a full-blown addict. I used for, like I said, 14 years, and I had a very successful appraisal firm. I had a very successful nonprofit, an importing business, did a real estate developing. So I was a very functioning addict. In fact, I had gone to a buddy of mine. I told him that, hey, I really don't like the path I'm on and what's going on. And not knowing any better and not seeing that there was really no harm, at least from his perspective, he said, well, geez, you're productive, you're doing well. I don't see really the problem. And as I look back on that, I don't blame him at all, because he didn't know any better. In fact, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened when I kind of got scared straight through a situation where I thought I was dying, literally. So I don't look back and blame that buddy at all, because like I say, he didn't know better. But really, I think what I was doing, I was reaching out for help in a way that, I didn't consciously, think that's what I was trying to accomplish. But subconsciously, I think that's what I was doing, because I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I mean, I would drive to my office some days and literally bawl because I was just so sick and tired, and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know what AA was, NA was, any of that stuff. We all have heard a lot more about it the last 5-8 years, particularly the last, like I say, 5 to 8, because of, the opiate pandemic and what OxyContin really did, as well as other opiates, but that one really, created the crisis, in my opinion. And obviously with the lawsuit that they're paying, a lot of other people feel the same way, but I didn't know what OxyContin was until I was driving one day to meet a buddy to go hit some golf balls down at the country club in Provo, Utah. And I was heading down 8th North, just ready to hit the canyon to turn up on University Avenue, which about 4 miles down that road is the golf course. And my body went numb from my neck down. And I kid you not, I felt like I had an out-of-body experience. I literally visualized or had a vision of seeing my car that I was driving with my body in it. And I lost it. And I drove to the golf course. My buddy was right there. The parking lot's right by the driving range. I got out and I'm like, I'm a wreck. Because I'm freaking out. I don't know what's going on. I had taken several different pills that day. I'd mixed some, not even considered powerful narcotics. In fact, they weren't even considered narcotics at the time. I'm not sure now if they've changed that classification, but Ultram, some lower level painkillers like Darvocet and Darvon. And I might've had a couple of Percodan or some oxycodone, something like that day. And so I don't know if it was a reaction to that, but I'm sure it was. And so I told my buddy what happened, and he actually was an addict as well. And because of my Crohn's, I knew my gastroenterologist very well. His son had worked for me at my father's car wash that I ran for many years. And so I had a friendship with him, and I had his personal cell phone number, as well as I knew where he lived. So I ended up driving to where he lived. He's in a gated community. And I pressed the speaker to talk through, to get let through. And they were having a party at their house. So I told him what had happened. And he said, well, let me call you back. I'll call a friend of mine who's an internist. He called that internist. And remember, at this time in my life, I didn't know what OxyContin was. Okay. This was probably 1997. And he called me back and said, Dr. Thomas cannot see you for 3 days. I don't know if he's out of town or whatever, but he's going to call in a prescription of 8 OxyContin. He wants you to take 2 a day. And then he can see you. So picture this. Here I was, literally scared straight. I was ready to be done. I was ready to take any direction anyone could tell me to help me get sober. And now I'm being given a prescription of a time-released opiate that had just recently been on the market for maybe a year or so. And now my brain is starting to think, wait a minute, I've got back problems. I've got Crohn's disease. I need these. And that's exactly what happened. So when I met with that doctor a few days later, he said, oh, based on the things we talked about, it sounds like you're, self-medicating for mild depression. So we're going to prescribe you some antidepressants and wean you off the opiates. Now, if you're a recovering addict, or if you're a loved one of a recovering addict, there is no such thing as weaning off. It's all or nothing, cold turkey. You got to just go and get it over with. I tried many a times to wean off, and many a times did I give my pills to people I trusted that knew of my addiction, that they would give me a certain amount a day. That never works because we're fantastic manipulators and fantastic liars. And I would always talk them out of more pills. And so it never works. So after this took place, that's, like I said, my brain said, oh, got to use this. So that doctor ended up basically prescribing me. It got to the point, I can't remember exactly, probably 30 or 40 a month. This was 10 milligrams. It wasn't the bigger milligrams that they ended up coming out with 80s and I think 120s. I don't know for sure. And it was before they were $1 a milligram, because I also was buying 120, a full prescription from a guy that I knew who had bad back problems, but he only used like 20 a month. And so I was taking a lot of these. I was probably ended up, when I got sober, July 27th of 2000, I ended up doing rapid opiate detox up in Seattle. And I had been taking 180 milligrams a day of OxyContin. And that was, for those that don't understand it or know, you're taking the pills just to function, to feel normal. You're not getting a high anymore unless you continue to add to it. But then your body just builds up a tolerance. And so you just have to have it to function. And, I did a lot of dumb things as an addict. I remember one day, it's almost a full-time job being an addict until you have, your pills for the next while. But that's all that consumes you. That's all you think about. And one day I was going to be running out. The next day I had a buddy that lives literally 3 hours away from where I live. And he had 4 ounces of a cough syrup that has hydrocodone in it. It was a rainy, wet fall day. And I jumped in the car and drove down and back 6 hours just to get 4 ounces of a cough syrup. Those are the kind of things you do. I made a lot of stupid decisions, and I put my life and my freedom at risk many a times. It just flat out owns you. And that's what consumes your thought process and thoughts until you have the fix. It's hard to explain unless you've been in an addict's shoes. I can tell you most addicts that I've met, using or sober, they're good people, but we're all using drugs, alcohol, food, exercise, all sorts of different things to cover up or deal with some other issue. And that's what I was doing. I wasn't happy in my life. And so I was using pills to be numb. It makes you forget stuff. But I can tell you, I was married for a couple of years, and actually it wasn't even 2 years when the opiates had taken over. My brain chemistry was way out of whack. And one day, this is hard to talk about because it was so brutal. I literally talked to my wife when she came home and basically was choosing the drugs over her. In fact, we had our second son when we were separated, and we were going to get a divorce because I truly believed that I'd be happy and okay as a weekend dad, and that divorce was the best thing. And honestly, to this day, I thank the attorney I had, because had he been organized and on top of stuff, we probably would have been divorced. And now we've been married for 30 years. And yes, I do have an incredible wife, because she's been through my addiction as well as me going to federal prison. And that was not related to my addiction. And I'll talk about that on another podcast. But to choose pills over your own kids and your wife is really sad. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the lucky ones that's alive. And I'm one of the lucky ones that for the most part was functioning addict, as far as I didn't, now it's probably not really true to say. I didn't burn my business down. I didn't spend all the money from my business on drugs. I was making a bunch of money. I spent plenty of money on drugs. In fact, when I went through rehab, that was one of the exercises. We had to figure out what, from time to physical, to actual money spent, to lost time at work, everything what we thought we had spent during our addiction. And mine was definitely into the 7 figures. It's crazy, but we do a lot of stupid things, once again, because our brain chemistry totally shifts. Now, they talk about, many of you may have heard of the movie 28 Days. I believe Sandra Bullock stars in it. And in 28 days, the fog lifts. And I can tell you that is so true. My wife and I had built our first home when we got separated. I also, about a year later, got sober when she was living at her parents with my 2 boys at the time that we had. And I was staying in that house, and the fog had lifted the day before. I had the flu. I was very sick. My wife's a nurse, and back in that time, she could literally bring a shot of an antibiotic home if it was a virus. And because I was so embarrassed to go into my doctor where she worked because of her peers, I didn't call the doctor on Friday. A couple days pass. Now I'm getting very, very clear and I'm tripping out that, holy hell, I'm thinking, holy shit, what have I done? I'm about to get divorced and not live with my kids. And that's not what I want, I don't think. Like, I know I love them. And so it was a Sunday night, and I'm in our house by myself. And this was back when everyone didn't carry around cell phones. In fact, brick phones were about the only phone out there. We didn't have the flip phone yet, but we did have phones that you could mount in a vehicle. And in her Ford Explorer, I did have a phone in that vehicle. Now, remember, she was living at her parents', and I didn't even want to call them to talk to her, because I was too embarrassed and humiliated if they happened to answer, because in their eyes, I was probably the biggest jackass, loser out there, and the guy that's hurting their daughter. And I don't blame them. I got to tell you, they're incredible people because they never treated me like that after we got through this. But so what did I do? It's 7 p.m. on a Sunday night. Now, what's the chances if I dial that phone that's in her vehicle that she's going to be in that vehicle on a Sunday night with 2 kids, one who is like 3 or 4 months old? She has no reason to be out and about, but I gave it a try. And she answered. She was just running to the hospital, or not the hospital, to the grocery store to get some bread and milk for her dad. I told her I didn't know really why I was calling, other than I'd been sick and I was hoping maybe that I could get a shot. I mean, talk about an idiot calling her when I've treated her like terribly, and I'm asking for a favor. But at the same time, I knew I needed to talk to her because the fog has lifted and I'm freaking out going, what am I doing? So she came over. Let me tell you, we were so far down the road, even as Mormon kids who, until you're divorced, you don't date anyone else or anything like that. Not only was I dating somebody, but she actually was, because it had gone on so long that even our very Orthodox Mormon parents were pretty much okay with it. I knew she was seeing a guy, and I knew that they were planning to go to Lake Powell on a trip, the two of them, a couple of weeks later. So I explained to her what was going on. At this point, she didn't know I was an addict. And because of that, and because I was now clear, she bought that I was sincere, and I was. But she told me her parents were going to freak out. She said, you got to go talk to my brother. One of her brothers I'm pretty close to. We have a lot, in common. And so I did. I took him to lunch a day or two later, and I explained to him what was going on. And because she wanted him to hear it first and then talk to her parents, because if he was also on, the side of believing what was truly going on, and that if we got back together, I wouldn't hurt her again, because I left her 3 times in 18 months. Left her, get back together, still using, would realize that's not really what I want, and leave her again. So I'm telling you, I put this woman through hell. And other than we're definitely supposed to be together, and I can tell you I love her to pieces, there was a long time I didn't forgive myself for all the shit I put her through. Now remember, I get through the addiction, we get back together, and everything's pretty good. But then I get indicted. I get indicted on a mortgage fraud case. My appraisal firm is thrown into it. My appraisal firm is named in the conspiracy, but also me as the owner. I'm not going to get into that story here on this episode, but we're going to talk about that on the next episode. But I'm telling you, if you're an addict, or if you're a loved one of an addict and you need help, there's help out there. And you deserve the life that sobriety can give you. You deserve to have the true happiness that sobriety will give you. Because we fool ourselves for a long time and we think that everything's okay. And we sit in denial while people try to help us. Because you've all probably heard it, until we own it, until we accept that we have a problem, just like in AA, we can't be helped. Get help before it's too late. You can contact me through Facebook Messenger, Steve Cloward, or you can check out my website, Life After Addiction and Indictment. Please come and join my Facebook group. It's free, Life After Addiction and Indictment. Check that out. And there'll be other like-minded people in there that you can talk to. Don't be ashamed if you're still dealing with, drugs or alcohol. But really what Life After Addiction and Indictment is about, it's to help those who have dealt with setbacks in their life. It doesn't have to be addiction, doesn't have to just be in, federal indictment or, county jail or prison. It can be that if you've had a setback, you once were on top, had your good job, good business, and made bad decisions, or drugs and alcohol got in the way, bad marriage got in the way, whatever it is that got in the way, and you're struggling to find a way to reclaim your life again. Because I can tell you, I got out of prison 10 years ago this past September. And for the first 8.5 years, I kept self-sabotaging myself every time I was about to have success again. I've chased every, shiny object, so to speak, business opportunity, different industry, different coach, different mentor, because I wasn't clear about loving myself, forgiving myself, and believing that I deserved to have the life that not only I had before, but better. So I've spent well into $100,000 plus the last 8+ years learning and growing and trying to figure things out. Then I finally have reclaimed my life again. I have my businesses back up and doing well. And so if you're struggling and just not sure what's holding you back or how to push through or how to, reclaim your life, get in touch with me, reach out, join the Facebook group. There won't be any judgment in there. There won't be, anybody that does anything like that. If it ever does happen, will be kicked out immediately. It's a place where you can be open, honest, get help or help others. That's my goal, is to impact and empower those who are struggling and been through difficult things in life, and they're just not finding their way back. Whether you lack confidence still, don't believe in yourself, haven't forgiven yourself, whatever it is. COVID's causing problems, ruining your business, whatever. I hope you enjoyed this, and look out for the next episode where I will be talking quite a bit about my addiction, my indictment, and letting you know what happened, why it happened, and how that really messed with my head on top of being an addict that's recovered, because I really have made some decisions in my life that harmed my family and me big time. That isn't easy to recover from. But I thank the good Lord for a wife and a family. The one thing I didn't lose, that's the most important thing, because I lost it all financially. And I lost every, worldly thing. But that stuff truly doesn't matter. So I was very, very lucky because I didn't lose my family. Hope y'all have a fantastic day. Remember that you're worth it, and you can make it happen again, and you deserve to reclaim your life again. Take care.